we've been trying to tell better stories about women and clergy and the church because we really need to tell better stories. Instead of just complaining about it, what if we flood the airwaves with something different?
I hear that. So I'm doing a series right now on deconstruction. And so I've told parts of my story, and I've had a couple of guests on. Zach Hunt's been on to talk about what it really means for the Bible to be inspired. And then Mark Harris has come on to do some healing of religious trauma and stuff. And so I wanted to hear your story as you've been going through this deconstruction journey, like kind of like how it started, and like I guess whatever you want to share about it. And then maybe we can talk about the Enneagram and how that all fits in there. And like I'm an Enneagram 6, so my journey looks a little different than you, who's an Enneagram 4 and stuff like that. So when did this like what was like the start, like here I think I'm deconstructing, or hey, things aren't working right, like where did it kind of start for you?
It's interesting because I'll just start at the beginning. I was raised in a Christian home and in a fairly conservative denomination and church, similar to how you were, I know. And but my family wasn't super, I would say, they were Christians and they were politically conservative, but I would say they weren't super socially conservative. So we had alcohol in the house, we played cards, we danced, that kind of thing, so I didn't grow up like in very like a fundamental kind of place. And sometime in my young adult life, I got myself in circles where I was kind of the more socially conservative black sheep of the family, where I was the one saying, guys, maybe we shouldn't drink at every event, or maybe we shouldn't, maybe we should see what the Holy Spirit wants to do through us. And not that any of that is wrong, but that's kind of the direction I swayed. Maybe that's my Enneagram 4-ness, trying to stay unique from my family a little bit. But somewhere in 2013, 2014, some things started happening with shootings, especially the shooting of Michael Brown in Ferguson, which I live right outside of St. Louis. And so that was something that I was kind of watching people that I knew lived in those neighborhoods. And I was thinking, well, I've always just assumed policemen are always good. And if you don't do anything wrong, you won't get shot. So clearly he must have been doing something wrong. And so that is the first time I started really questioning it. My best friend's son is adopted and he's Black. Her sister has 2 brown children who were adopted. And I just started looking at these little brown and Black babies around me thinking, what about when they grow up? What if they're not doing something wrong? And I still wasn't totally sure, like, if there was a black and white, not, no pun intended, answer for that. But it got me thinking, maybe everything isn't as right or wrong, black and white, as I've just always assumed it was. So that is sort of what started me thinking, okay, politically, this is where some people seem to line up on this issue. And this is where, and you can't cross over. If you believe this, you believe everything that comes along with this. And if you believe this, you believe everything that comes along with this. And those were the first times I really started seeing that in my adult life. Like, if you are Republican, which I was raised to be, then you believe abortion is always wrong, no matter what. And you believe that police are always good, no matter. There's just this litmus test, right, of what it means to be a Republican. And in my circles, if you were a Christian, you were automatically a Republican. So that's the environment I was swimming in. And 2016, I saw Donald Trump running for president, and I had been entertained by him on The Apprentice and thought, what a joke. A reality star is running for president. I can't believe anyone's giving him even a little bit of stage time. This is ridiculous. And all the people around me, Christians, Republicans, were saying, oh, I hope he doesn't get the nominee. I hope he doesn't make it. We don't want to vote for him. But he did. Somehow he ended up at the end of it and then won the presidency. And all of a sudden, all of the Christians around me were saying, well, he's the lesser of 2 evils. Well, I guess we'll hold our nose and vote for him. And within, I don't know, a year, those same people who were holding their noses were praising him on my social media feeds about what a wonderful president he was.
Yeah.
And that's when I started going, ooh, I don't think I can identify as fully with this Republican Party as I thought I could. And that's really my deconstruction in spirituality started politically.
Wow. Yeah. I think 2016 seems so long ago. I mean, I know it's not, right? But the last 3 years have been so long. So
That's true.
2016 seems like it was 20 years ago. Well, actually, it is. It's not that long ago. Anyway, yeah, I guess it's going to be 2024. So, but yeah, I remember when he got the nominee and was going to run, and I started hearing all of these Christians calling him a Christian. Like they went, oh, well, he went to the altar and he prayed a prayer. I'm like, that does not make him a Christian. And like, I just lost my mind and thought, what in the world? We have to start reevaluating some things. Yeah, so I think that there's like a collective of people who are like, okay, if the political doesn't line up, now what are we going to do with all the other stuff?
Exactly. So I don't love the word deconstruction. I think it's an applicable word. I just don't love it because I think it's getting a weird connotation. But what I started doing, it wasn't like, let me start with Jesus and work my way backwards. I was going, can I unbundle some of my political and social beliefs from what I believe about Jesus, and would he still stay intact if I do this?
Yeah.
So it really was more of an unbundling process to say, wait, I'm pretty sure I want to stay with Jesus. I'm pretty sure he's going to be standing here if everything else burns down. I had not questioned who he was or his character or what I had seen him do in my life. But everything else really felt like, what happens if I throw it in the fire? Is any of it going to stay standing? Is any of it going to stay intact? And so I was really trying to just unbundle as much of cultural and societal expectations of what being a Christian meant from the person that I knew Jesus was. I cannot even tell you the 4 years that Donald Trump was president, I saw Christians, my parents, their friends, the people, my old teachers, people I had respected my whole life say, oh, what a great president. What a good man he is. Oh, look at his beautiful wife. And I'm saying these are the exact same people that when Bill Clinton was president were saying how terrible it was because he was such an ungodly example of a man in the White House for little kids. And I thought, you can't have it both ways. You told me how terrible Obama was, and he's the most family man president we've had in like 2 decades. He was above reproach and a lot of social issues and a lot of like the way he carried himself. And yet all I heard was how terrible he was and what an awful president. And none of this makes sense to me anymore. Nothing about this feels Christian to me. And I'm not saying the president necessarily should be a Christian, but the Christians who are endorsing these people for their character, it started to not line up.
Yeah. So after you started kind of pulling on those threads, when did you notice it started to then move over into, because I wouldn't call those, well, I mean, some people would call those theological threads. I don't think they're theological threads. What did it cross over then into theological issues, and like how did you deal with that?
I think a little bit, because of pulling at those political threads, I started listening to different podcasts. The Holy Post podcast has been a real game changer for me in the last few years. It's I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's Phil Vischer, who's the creator of VeggieTales, and a former pastor and a couple of authors, and they discuss current issues, but from this lens of what's happening with Christians, and is Christian nationalism really the dangerous road we think we want to head down? And they call out those dangers. So that's been really helpful to me. And doing that then got me into seeing a whole lot of more people and authors and opened me up to different theological perspectives because of those political unbundling. So, I think I have a head start a little bit on some theological beliefs that people might find controversial, because as you know, growing up in a Wesleyan denomination, a Wesleyan background, women have been ordained in this church for, you probably know better than I do, but like 200 years. I don't even know. It's been a long time. women have been given positions of power. And it was during that time, that during Trump's election years, that I was watching a really good friend. She was the senior pastor of my home church and was met with a lot of resistance actually from the community at first. And I thought, no, what, that we've always ordained women. Of course, women are senior of course, this shouldn't even be a question. And it was really disheartening to watch some of the reaction toward that. And so that started me into, okay, what has historically been the role of women in the church? Because we can't be the only denomination or the only sect of denominations that have done this. And so Beth Allison Barr wrote Biblical Womanhood. I can't remember the title.
Oh, yeah.
Something like that. And started reading about just patriarchy in general. And then I was all fired up, like, oh my gosh, the reason everything is wrong in this country is patriarchy. But then you read more and you're like, no, it's patriarchy and white supremacy. And then you read a little bit more and you're like, and capitalism. And none of those things can really be separated out without tearing out some of your theological beliefs, because they're so intertwined. Christianity is a system that was in America. Now, I don't speak for the rest of the world, and I'm sure they're doing it better in a lot of other places. But American Christianity is deeply rooted in white supremacy, patriarchy, and capitalism. It just is. They're all intertwined. That doesn't mean every person who's a Christian in America subscribes to those beliefs, of course.
Right.
But the deepest systems are tied together in this country. And when you start pulling at one thread, man, they all just fall apart.
Yeah. They are like enmeshed. And because I didn't grow up in the church, but then I had a Catholic background, and then of course I came into a Wesleyan holiness denomination where people, they've been late 1800s, and I'm like, so there was a lot of stuff where I would hear other people talk, and I'd be like, oh, that's just because you're Calvinist and you just don't understand, blah blah blah. But it is interesting that you made that comment about your friend, because I had experienced some negativity and stuff like that as a woman in ministry. But once Trump became president, and then especially when 2020 hit, it was like all of a sudden my experience multiplied. And I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. It was so unsettling, because I'm like, I thought I worked through all this. I thought, my ministry and my what I had already done had given me credibility already. And now all of a sudden, I've been a minister for, a while, and now all of a sudden, people are questioning things. And I'm like, wait a minute, this doesn't make any sense. But yeah, I think that there is a certain amount where just the landscape shifted. And I feel like some of us who kind of like you said, we kind of had a head start. I don't know if it all caught up or what. Yeah.
There was something about making America great again and reverting it back 50, 60 years. Some people didn't think through the ramifications of that, because 50 and 60 years ago, maybe there wouldn't have been some of the social agendas that and I put that in air quotes because, some people think that today's social agendas are the worst that our culture's ever seen ever. I mean, clearly they don't remember the days of, in Bible times where people were literally throwing their babies in fires, but I digress. But 50, 60 years ago, women didn't have credit cards on their own. They could not leave abusive relationships. People of color were still fighting for equal rights. There was separatism everywhere, segregation. America was not great. It was great if you were white middle class or above and a man. It was the patriarchal white supremacy capitalist structure. And that's what made America great, And so I really feel like that was a permeated belief system over the last few years, where people were like, oh, we need to go back to that. But do you remember that? I mean, I wasn't even alive then, and I don't want to go back to that,
Well, I was just a little girl. I remember when my mom got her first credit card.
I can't even imagine those days, especially with this as far as we still have to go, I think.
Right? Oh, man. So you started pulling on the threads. Where were you going to church at the time?
Oh, that's an interesting question. was kind of going back and forth between two churches at the time. One where I just felt like I had a lot of home base there. I had moved, my family, we moved away from my home church where I grew up. So there were no Wesleyan Holiness churches around my area. So I was just kind of going to a couple non-denominational ones. One that was a little bit more conservative, but I had a lot of people there, and one that was a little bit more liberal. I wouldn't say crazy or anything. But I just didn't know very many people. There wasn't like a community. So I kind of bounced back and forth between those two churches for a few years. And even still today, I would say I'm still kind of bouncing. Although if I'm going to be really honest with you, we don't bounce into those doors of either place very often. And it's not because there are bad people there. There aren't. I actually really adore the leadership of both places and the people that attend. But I have found more church and more community in the places where I've built it, and in the places where, like when we do our women's retreats, or when we are working with trafficking survivors, or when Deidre and she was on this podcast with me last time, when we're getting together with our girlfriends and we're just talking about what the Lord is doing in our lives. That's church to me. I have the community and I have places where I'm serving, and I don't feel the need to be inside the doors every Sunday.
Yeah. I feel like, so I heard someone say this not too long ago, and they said that the church has not done a real good job of creating community. And so because of that, and with us also being hyper individualistic society now, it's left a open door for conspiracy theories. And so like that vacancy of not having true community, conspiracy theories have been able to like come in and fill the void, and people almost build community around the conspiracy theories instead of like our actual faith, or like some of the community groups you guys are doing with like your women's retreats and stuff. Yeah.
I'm sure the pandemic and just even having people isolated for so long exacerbated all of that, because not only was this global thing happening that none of us had to confront in our lifetime, and it was a very, very long time of really scary unknowns, but we were literally isolated away from people, and our community was all found online for a long time. And we're going to see the ramifications from that for years to come, I think, even in our children. So I don't know what could have been done differently necessarily in all of that, but I do think that it's going to have some far-reaching consequences because of that time. And the church was struggling during that time, and I don't blame them. Man, I mean, you were a pastor. You could not have paid me to try to pastor a church during the pandemic. How do you go and make a virtual space real? How do you make everyone happy when everything became a political belief all of a sudden, whether you mask or don't mask, or hold service or don't hold service? Now you are aligning yourself with a political party, whatever choice you made. It was impossible during that time for pastors. And I imagine a lot of people have walked away since then because of how tiring and exhausting that time was.
Yeah. And a lot of it is too, depends on a lot of it depended on too, on what state you were in and what denomination you were in. Like, so like our denomination kind of took hands off. And then of course, then when Trump made it so that churches don't have to follow the rules, that made it even harder for a decision. And then of course I'm in Michigan, and our governor was one of the more stringent on, keeping distances and stuff like that. And so, yeah, like every decision I made regarding that was definitely questioned and challenged.
Exactly.
Yeah, it was. And so I'm thinking about, so when did it kind of like pick up speed? Was it during the pandemic that it really picked up speed for you? Was there like a tipping point? I mean, other than like, I know you talked about the 2016 election kind of was like the starting point. But was there like a tipping point for you?
It was ironic because I think it was during 2020 when I actually thought, oh, maybe I'll go be a Republican again, because I really don't want to wear a mask. And maybe this COVID thing's not such a big deal. That was I thought that for like a month. And it's because of my own fear of not knowing what was going to happen and how long my kids were going to be home from school and the shutdown. And it was just a terrifying time. And then I started seeing how whatever you believed about masks and vaccines and everything aligned you with a political party. I was like, oh, okay, well, I'm staying out of that then. So I was actually like, this is the most conservative I've felt in 4 years, when the pandemic first started. But then I started seeing like, oh, maybe this is a real thing. Maybe this is worse than we thought. Maybe this isn't just a cosmic joke. And so I think it was probably the January 6th insurrection. I was lying in bed with COVID, sicker than I've ever been in my entire life, praying that there would be a vaccine soon. And on Facebook, when I would get the energy to lift up my phone, see, oh my gosh, people are storming the Capitol, and it's like at the behest of the former president. What the heck is going on, and why are we okay with this? And I think that was probably the ultimate, like, I am done. I'm going to go figure out how to align with a different, not even like just unregister myself as a Republican with the state of Illinois. And I just couldn't. I could not believe the amount of people cheering him on. I could not believe the amount of people saying insurrection is the wrong word. I knew people who were in DC that day, not the ones storming the Capitol, but they were holding prayer events around the lawn, probably because they thought that it was being stolen from them. And I thought, okay, if people are going to go so far as to believe this election was stolen with as many guards as we have and legal systems proving that that's not true, I don't know how. I mean, that's it. That's, again, I know that comes down to political stuff, and I know that that's not really the theology, but how do you untangle it when the pictures from that day have a cross with an American flag behind it while people are running over the gates into the Capitol? I could not figure out for the life of me why this was okay. Nothing about the last 4 years had been what I would say of Jesus. Not one Christian who supported him was coming at issues, coming at people even on Facebook to try to argue from a lens of love and compassion and unending grace and just everything that I see Jesus modeling. I didn't see that in Christians who followed Trump at all.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, like, I don't know if this is for you, but for me, it started to like unravel my trust, which then was like, okay, not what other things should I not trust them about?
Exactly. Like, if the whole reason that the Republican Party is the Christian party, I found out it's because the moral majority back in whenever, reading like Kristen Kobes Dumais and all these books, Jesus and John Wayne, it all tied back to the issue of abortion. And if abortion is the single issue that deems this the Christian party, and then I find out that actually abortion rates go down when a Democratic president is in office and they go up when a Republican president is in office, then maybe the solution isn't actually who's leading the country. Maybe the solution is, oh, maybe we can serve unwed mothers. Maybe we can care about children in foster and adoption. Maybe there's more that we can do to actually boots on the ground, help those marginalized communities and not just elect a leader who has a belief system that we want to hear.
Yeah.
And so it astounds me that abortion remains a single issue vote for people to this day, because it's just, and then what kills me even more is that Trump got to elect Supreme Court justices who were pro-life, because it really made everybody go, see, we did the right thing. We did the right thing. And now Roe v. Wade's been revoked. And it just, it's not going to help abortion. It's just going to make marginalized women and children more vulnerable, more at risk, and in more danger.
Yeah. And they didn't replace it with other things. It's not like,
exactly.
I knew that about the statistics, that when you have a Democrat, if you have a pro-choice person in the White House, that they offer people choices, like vouchers for daycare and pregnancy, prenatal care, and WIC programs, and continuing ed programs, and one thing after another. And then we get a pro-life person in the White House, and they literally take all the stuff away. Like anything,
and then ban abortion.
Anything that would help you to choose life, they eliminate. I'm like, wait a minute, how is that pro-life?
I don't get it. And I don't understand why education is supposed to be free for everyone in the country, and that's okay. But healthcare shouldn't be free because that's socialist. Things just didn't start making sense when I really thought to look at them. But
Yeah.
if we had universal healthcare, I promise there would be more women that could have babies because the abortion's a lot cheaper than not having insurance through childbirth. Whatever that is. I'm just saying like you said, there's so many things that could help alleviate the problems, but it's considered then socialism. It's considered, no, that's the church's job to go in and serve the poor. Well, the Bible also says if we want to take the Bible super literally in the Old Testament, which we really seem to want to do, even though that's old covenant law, it also says that we're supposed to give away all of our money and every 7 years forgive debts. And there's a whole lot of stuff we're not following in an economic system in the Old Testament, but we sure want to follow some of the social systems.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I know. I'm like, I could use a Jubilee.
Yeah. Amen. Get my college loans gone. That's the other thing. That was the other big thing that happened when President Biden said that he was going to eliminate $10,000 worth of college loans. And everybody was like, I'm not paying for someone else's education. I'm like, these are Christians that I've looked up to and respected my whole life going, you chose it. And I'm like, you didn't give us a choice. You didn't give us a choice. You said you have to earn a living, you go to college. Now I'm an educator. I'm a believer in higher ed. I worked at a university. I believe in it, but also we need to go after the loan companies because this is a terrible idea. $10,000 is not going to make a dent in my undergraduate loan. And I owe more today after paying tens of thousands of dollars off than the day I graduated college. Is that my fault?
Right.
I've paid my dues and I owe more than I did 20 years ago.
Oh yeah.
I'll take $10,000, please.
Yep. Right. I know.
Thanks for your compassion, Christian boomers. It's not all boomers. Sorry. That was a generic thing, but it seems to be the ones that are the most vocal on my newsfeed.
Right. Yeah. I know. And they want pastors to have all the education and
Exactly.
and how are we gonna pay? We can't even pay our bills. You want us to pay our for our tuition also?
Yeah, I worked in a ministry job for 15 years, ministry in schools, and got paid pennies because it's a mission, it's a service. You do this for God. And I've seen friends work in churches and be on church staffs, and you do this for God. Or the men get the title of pastor and the women do the exact same job with no title and less money. And it's hard, man. It's hard when you start really looking at everything.
Yeah. Yeah. When you start looking at it, you see the patriarchy and, even in my system, like in the last couple of years, I've a lot of leaders who will boast about being egalitarian, but when push comes to shove, I'm like, your complementarianism is showing and your patriarchy is showing. Yeah.
It hurts men too. I don't know if you watched the Barbie movie, but I've seen it 3 times already. Now I own it digitally. I love it so much. And, it touts the dangers of patriarchy and of matriarchy. It's literally going, this hurts women and men whenever there's an oppressive system in place. It's not about who's in charge. It's about, is it oppressive? It's wrong if it's oppressive. And so patriarchy hurts men just as much. It really, really does.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, it does. And so I don't know how much you want to talk about. Okay, let's do it this way. I would say I don't know what you want to talk about the theological part, but let's do it this way.
Let's do it.
How have you seen? Okay, you're an Enneagram 4, which is the individualist, right? Right. So that's kind of like the little phrase of it. Maybe can you just talk about like in a nutshell, like the Enneagram 4, and all the words like core, fear, and all that kind of stuff. And how have you seen that play a role in your deconstruction?
I do think in some ways being a 4, as an individualist, I am comfortable with gray areas. So that is something I think that helps me to be able to look at something and not be so concerned that there's not a very right or a very wrong answer. Deidre, my ministry partner, she's an Enneagram 1, and she's been along a very parallel journey of me as me, and it's been killing her because she needs a right answer and a wrong answer, because otherwise, how does she know if she's doing it right?
Yeah.
That doesn't bother me as much. But as a 4, my core fear is being misunderstood.
Mm.
I don't want to be misunderstood. And I've had people say to me like, well, the Bible is clear, or if you took the Bible seriously, you would believe this. And I thought, how do you misunderstand me that much to think that I don't take the Bible seriously? I have been following Jesus since I was 4 years old. I have a freaking ministry, for crying out loud. I I hold the Bible to such high standards that I'm not just trying to like take things out of context. I'm really trying to dig in and learn from experts who have gone into the historical and contextual and cultural things to look what are the translations, who had an agenda when they translated this into English. And I have come to different conclusions on a lot of beliefs that I held growing up, but it's because of how highly I took the Bible. So it actually hurts me to think that they think I don't take the Bible seriously because I'm just following my current culture. Like as a 4, I just want them to understand that that is not my journey here. In fact, it's scary to believe completely differently than the safety and security of how you were raised. It's a scary thing. But sometimes when you know it, you can't unsee it.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah. I'm an Enneagram 6, so we're the loyalist, and our greatest fear is fear, but more than that, it's being safe, right?
Yeah.
And and I and so there was, for me, like, the big tipping point for me was when people I had trusted and thought were safe no longer were safe, and I could no longer trust them.
Yeah.
And then it was like, I guess I kind of go into that counterphobic, like,
Hmm.
oh, okay, you know, and so I didn't have to be like, it gave me freedom to not have to be a loyalist anymore, because, well, the one person I know I can trust is me.
Mm,
um,
that's good
yeah,
because that's a huge growth thing for a 6 to be able to look and trust yourself.
yeah,
6s don't have an easy time with that, and they can get attached to belief systems really easily and be the conspiracists because that unites them to a community of other skeptics and stuff too. So I think the fact that you are a 6 and have come on this journey speaks volumes to your own journey and your own growth.
wow, well, thanks. um, Maybe can we just talk maybe for a few minutes about the other numbers, and maybe, I don't know, just something that would help them on the deconstruction journey?
Yeah. Yeah, just to start at the beginning, the ones, they're kind of the perfectionists, but they're also the reformers. So I think changing their belief system or unbundling their belief system is a scary journey, like I said, for them, because if they find out that they've been wrong their whole lives, what does that do to who they are as a person? Their whole thing is, I want to be right, I want to be good, but they also want to make things better. So, I'll just speak for, Deidre's case. She's like, oh, I see things differently. Now I feel a responsibility to go make sure things change and things get better. And so there is a freedom in that too, of going, okay, I did it. I think I was doing it wrong for a lot of years, but now I have another chance to go do it right. But
Yeah,
I think they need to be aware that it's going to feel real painful and real scary, and they're not going to want to look at it for a long time because of what it speaks to them about their own person.
yeah,
Enneagram 2s, they're the helpers and they value belonging and connection. So, how in the world could an Enneagram 2 go on this journey alone? I don't know, because they would be risking every connection, right? They would be risking every place of belonging, especially if their belonging is part of a group of people who weren't willing to go on that journey with them. I just think it would be almost impossible. So for an Enneagram 2 to kind of do that, they have to be okay with their own identity and who God says they are, and find that connection so strongly in Jesus that they would be willing to kind of throw everything else away and just
yeah,
hope that a buddy goes with them. I don't know.
yeah. That's what I say. They might need to find themselves a deconstruction community or something.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Enneagram 3s are the achievers. And so I think, I don't know how I would say this. I think they want to be the best at things. They want to be on top. They want to know that they have value and worth. So if they are part of a community that's like, hey, we're all going to go deconstruct, they'll be like, I'm going to be the best deconstructor, right? But you know, if they find themselves where they're kind of already finding their value in what they are accomplishing, and deconstructing would risk that, I think that's where the fear would come in.
Yeah.
If this breaks how they see your value, are you willing to take that journey? I don't know.
Yeah.
For me, the 4, like I said, I think the it's a little bit easy to be okay with not having answers with uncertainty, but it's also very scary to think that you could be really misunderstood.
Yeah.
Because we just want to be authentically who we are, and we want people to see who we are. And if they are making assumptions about us that aren't true, that's incredibly threatening. 5s, I think 5s are like, they're the investigators, they're the analysts. So they're like, I am not emotionally attached to the outcome. Show me the data. Let me do my own research. I might spend 10 years on this journey, and I will emerge with the best possible answer based on the data I have found. So they might be the actual best ones to really go and deconstruct in a really educated, philosophical kind of way.
Yeah. I'm trying to lean to my 5 wing for that.
Yeah. 6s, I think we talked about with you. I think there's a fear in that, because if you found your security in the community that believes a certain way, or you found your security in these actual beliefs, you get very attached to them. So what happens when you threaten that a little bit? You have to learn how to trust yourself. I think it kind of is the same thing as 2s. If you can be alone with yourself, for 6, trust your own decision making. That's how you have to get started. You know, what if you come to the wrong conclusion and you can't verify it with anybody else?
Yeah. It's definitely it was definitely along between the oh, I'm not sure what I'm doing. I got some questions, I got some doubts before the actual tipping point. There was definitely time in between, you know. Yeah,
Right.
and some of that was, yeah.
Yeah, there has to be a lot of personal growth. You have to be really willing to look at your own stuff. In order to change any kind of external belief, you really have to know who you are and be doing the internal work first. I just really believe that.
Yeah.
With any number.
Yeah.
7s are the enthusiasts, and they kind of want to have fun. So I don't know that there is concerned maybe overall as to being right or wrong on maybe a certain belief or issue. And they may not be willing to look at something that's going to cause them pain or feeling trapped into a certain way of being. So they might be a little bit like better with being a little bit more fluid in their beliefs, because they don't want to be trapped or pinned down in any way anyway.
Yeah.
8s, they don't trust a whole lot of people, but they really trust their own gut instinct. So if they're going to walk this journey, they're going to figure out what they believe, and they're going to figure it out fast and probably stick to it. And you can either come along with them or not.
Yep. That's my husband.
He's not going to really question it. He's not really going to care what you think about his journey undertaking it.
Yeah.
And then 9s don't want to engage just in life. So doing this work as a 9, especially if it's going to cause conflict and energy and internal conflict where they're wrestling with decisions and things like that, I just think it's going to take more energy than they really have time for, unless they've done some of that internal work themselves already.
Yeah.
That's my quickest rundown on what may or may not keep people from embarking on this.
Well, that's fun. I'm trying to use my Enneagram 6 to create a safe space for some of those 2s and 9s and stuff like that are like, I don't know if I'm
Yeah. And I get so fired up. I have that conflict style as a 4 where I want to go, I know that I'm not even that I'm right here, but I know that I've done my due diligence to come to this belief system, and you're not going to challenge me on it because I know I've done my work. But I also don't want the conflict and relational breach that causes, because I'm so afraid of feeling misunderstood and not being seen for who I am in the moment. So it's this really weird tension of, I kind of want to fight with you, and I kind of just don't ever want to talk about it ever.
Yeah. So where are you now on this journey? Do you feel like you started reconstructing, or are you still in that process of, uh, you know,
I think I'm in the process where I've literally burnt everything down and
Mm.
Jesus remains. And I'm
Yeah.
not gonna lie, at the beginning of that, I was a little scared to do that. I was like, is he still gonna be there? Is he still gonna be there? I mean, everything else seems to be crumbling. Is he still gonna be there? And I will say that without a doubt in my heart, Jesus has stayed. He is the statue. He has been firm and steady through this whole process and has not walked away. In fact, I've seen him more closely. I've I've been more attached to the person and the character of who he is in this journey than I ever was when it was just external beliefs that other people were instilling in me. So that's been a really big blessing. When you say reconstructed, I would say I'm holding everything loosely.
Mm.
I think that I now am going, patriarchy's wrong. I don't know what right looks like. Not sure I love capitalism. I know white supremacy should go away. So but I don't know that I know the best ways to do a lot of this stuff. I don't know that I hold the answers to how to dismantle oppressive systems. I do know that love, compassion, and mercy should lead us in every decision that we make. And that's kind of the only thing I know right now. I know that I'm not going to condemn people for whatever they profess to believe and whatever they are doing. I'm not going to condemn them because I don't think condemnation ever leads us to grace. I don't think condemnation ever leads us to wholeness. And I think that love and unending grace are the only things that can put us back together and make us the integrated people. I will say that this journey has brought a really surprising theological conclusion for me. Bear with me for just a second.
Okay.
Okay, so in the garden, in the fall of man, they ate the apple, they were deceived, blah, blah, blah. Now there's patriarchy, now there's a curse, right? I am now looking at it in a little bit of a different lens and going, what if it wasn't like they disobeyed? What if it was like they shortcutted to the thing they were always going to get in the first place? Because it was the tree of knowledge of good and evil that they ate from. God was not going to keep the knowledge of good and evil from them, but he was growing them into the people to be able to handle what that knowledge looked like and then to steward it in the earth. And they went and said, well, let's do it for ourselves. And they went and took the shortcut. And when they did that, all of a sudden they were like, I'm going to call this good, I'm going to call this evil. And it became this really binary system of seeing good and evil, as opposed to, I think, I'm not God, but however he was going to bring that into the earth was not going to be so binary.
Mm.
I think it was going to be a lot more both ands of a lot of things.
Yeah.
And I think we took a shortcut in the garden, and I think we're still trying to shortcut and box people and label people and determine you're Christian, so you have to be a Republican. You are gay, so you are obviously not a Christian. You are such and such and such, right? And we determine what boxes people belong in by what choices they seem to make outwardly. And I don't think I think he came and just tore down every binary he possibly could. He elevated women. He sat with sinners. He tore the veil, which was a very literal, tearing of the binary of these two different worlds. He pulled those apart so they would all blend together. I just think it's so much more of both and instead of the right, wrong, black, white binaries that we try to instill. And I think we do it out of fear.
Mm-hmm.
So I know why we do it, but I think that's what happened in the garden. That's my own personal Genesis interpretation.
Yeah, and I like how you make the comment about the shortcut, because I think that especially in deconstruction, like even I've said it myself, I've been like, I just want to get this over with because it's really painful. And there's a lot of, like even today I was just like, I mean, I'm not feeling good because my asthma's flared up. And I'm just like, man, this is just taking so long to figure out where I'm going, what's next. But I think that that's where we have, especially in the church, we've gotten ourselves into trouble. Obviously the binary aspect where, man, there is no middle of the road. It's either this or that. which, I mean, I don't know that works a whole lot in very many areas of, practical living. But then also the shortcut, like everybody wants the silver bullet. And when it comes to these kind of things, there is no silver bullet. There's no
Mm-mm.
silver bullet in our marriages, in having, good, healthy relationships with our kids, and there's no shortcut in our relationship with God. And yeah.
I mean, Jesus broke the Sabbath repeatedly. Like he literally looked at the Pharisees and broke one of the 10 commandments over and over and over to them because he was doing it in the name of loving and caring for the least of these.
Yeah.
So if anything, Jesus is saying, stop getting so caught up in the binary of the this or that and go, how can I extend love here? I really believe that love and mercy has to trump, no pun intended again, every rule and every sin we've put into place. And the word sin, don't even get me started on that either, because we've already tried to binary that down into behaviors.
Mhm.
And if anyone's ever listened to my podcast, they know that we call sin what happens when we are disintegrated within our souls.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that definition. I like John Wesley's definition too, to miss the mark, which
Mm-hmm.
you know, um, and man, we just um somebody in my denomination recently said, he said, um, he said he said sanctification is important, or love is important, but not at the expense of sin. And I'm like, oh my gosh, Lord, help us.
It's got to
If
be the
we have
starting point.
elevated sin and the importance of sin over love, it's idolatry. God is, 1 John chapter 4, right? God is love. And we idolize and worship sin in this weird way. Yeah.
I mean, we do the same with sexuality and our bodies. When we are so dismissive of those parts of ourselves, then it's almost a Gnostic view of things. And that's dismissing, our created beings that God made. We do the same with the Bible. We worship that in such a way and that we elevate that above the person of Jesus. Well, Jesus is the word of God. The Bible is not the word of God, not the capital W,
Mhm.
The Bible's important, don't get me wrong, but Jesus is the word of God.
Yeah. I told my congregation on Sunday, I'm like, Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. Truth is a person. It's not an abstract concept.
Yeah.
And so we need to look to the truth, who is, the person of Jesus. You made a comment about, burning it all down and stuff. And I'm not, you're way ahead of me on any of this. But it's definitely, the last 6 months have definitely sped the process up and some of the stuff I've gone through. And I'm like, I don't need this, and I'm kind of burning stuff to the ground. And yeah, same kind of thing where I'm like, oh my goodness, is God gonna survive this whole thing? And I heard someone else, well, actually it was Science Mike, he said this in his book, Finding God in the Waves. I said, like, the one thing I can't deconstruct is that initial encounter, that because I had a radical encounter with the love of God when I, whatever, quote unquote, saved, however you want to call that. And like, that's the thing I like, that is, I don't know what to do with that experience,
Mm-hmm.
and
I think Jesus is, the Holy Spirit, God, he's going to keep proving himself. I don't even know how to refer to that being anymore. But I just say Jesus, it's easier, but Jesus is going to just keep proving over and over and over that he remains. I'm just not worried about that part of it. I'm not worried about people going through deconstruction because partly because I think I've changed my mind a little bit on even what happens if you're saved or not saved. But also because I just believe that Jesus is here to set us free, and freedom doesn't have fear involved. Freedom isn't fear. And I think the reason we want to label everything and call it this or that and be so afraid of sin and our bodies and sexuality and the other and everything else, it's because of fear. It's all fear-based, and that's not of God. So I think I would just challenge, if people aren't on this journey, they might not be listening to this episode anyway, but just on the off chance somebody I'm friends with wants to hear what I'm saying about it, I would just challenge people to start doing their own inner work first, because when you can find that freedom and that integration in who you are and who Jesus created you to be within yourself, the fear of the external, it fades.
Mm.
And you don't have to be so scared about, what if I was wrong? What if they're wrong? What if I'm wrong now? The fear just goes away.
Yeah. Yeah, the inner work is so important. Man, this is
Free-
good.
Thanks. I'm really passionate about this. We say a lot in our ministry, free people, free people.
Mhm.
And I think we can do a lot of work in the world that's good without Jesus. I think we can do a lot of work in the world that's good without being whole. I think we can do a lot of work in the world that's good without being free. But I will also say that our brokenness breaks others and our wounds wound others. So if we're not diligent to do that internal work, it's not going to be as impactful out in the world as it could be. So it's got to start with yourself.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Definitely. And I like that. Free people, free people.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess any last words of thought to people, thoughts or encouragement, whatever, people who are like just starting this journey and like, I don't even know where to start. Yeah.
I don't know where to start either, but for me, it really helped to have a safe person kind of walking it with me. And I know not everyone has access to that, but those people exist somewhere. So even if you have to find it online, find someone safe to kind of process this through, that won't come with judgment or fear-based, stigma attached to it, anything like that. Because I think having that safe person is really, or find resources that help you feel listened to and heard. Maybe that's a podcast like I did. Maybe it's, the podcast series you've been doing, or the one I do, I think would be helpful, or the Holy Post podcast. Find people who, you're not alone, even if they're not in your daily life, like I got the privilege of having. Find people who are willing to hear you, even if it's on a podcast.
Yeah.
We've been trying to tell better stories about women and clergy and the church because we really need to tell better stories. Instead of just complaining about it, what if we flood the airwaves with something different?